Nestled deep in the unforgiving wilderness of Alaska's Kenai Peninsula lies the abandoned town of Portlock, a place that whispers its secrets through the rustling of trees and the crashing of distant waves. For decades, this remote settlement was a thriving community, but something dark and unexplainable took hold, forcing its residents to flee in fear. Hunters vanished without a trace. Fishermen's bodies were found with wounds that defied explanation. And deep in the forest, strange footprints too large to belong to any man pressed into the mossy earth. To this day, the shadow of Portlock looms large, a chilling reminder that some places are better left untouched, and some mysteries are better left unsolved. The story of Portlock, Alaska, begins in the early 20th century, in a remote and forbidding corner of the Kenai Peninsula, nestled along the jagged coastline where dense forests meet icy waters. The town was established around 1900 as a fishing and canning hub. Its founders were lured by the promise of Alaska's untapped resources, abundant salmon, vast timber, and fertile hunting grounds. For a time, the promise seemed real. Homes were built, the cannery buzzed with activity, and families settled into what they hoped would be a prosperous life on the edge of the wilderness. But even from the beginning, Portlock was different. An isolated place where the rules of civilization felt fragile. The towering mountains and endless forests surrounding the town seemed to loom over its inhabitants, an ever-present reminder that they were intruders in a land ruled by nature. For the Alutiiq people, this land was not just wild, it was dangerous. They spoke of a malevolent presence lurking in the woods, a creature they called the Nantina. Described as an ape-like being with unrelenting strength and a dark, brooding intelligence, it was said to watch from the shadows, striking fear into anyone who strayed too far into the forest. The settlers dismissed these stories as superstitions of the past. They were modern pioneers, confident in their ability to tame even the harshest of lands. Yet, as the years passed, whispers began to circulate among the townsfolk. It started small. Stories of strange footprints found near logging sites or peculiar howls echoing through the mountains at night. Fishermen swore they saw shadows darting between the trees as they brought in their catches. Hunters, familiar with every inch of the terrain, claimed the forest felt different, heavier somehow, as if they were being watched. Then came the strange events no one could ignore. Tools would vanish, only to be found miles away, bent or shattered as though by enormous hands. Livestock disappeared without a trace, their pens left eerily undisturbed. Some of the older residents began to mutter that the land itself was fighting back, that the settlers had disturbed something ancient and vengeful. Even so, the townsfolk pushed forward. They had worked too hard to abandon their new lives over unexplained phenomena. Yet unease grew with each passing season, casting a long shadow over Portlock. What started as whispers in the dark would soon give way to screams, and the haunting events that would seal the town's fate had only just begun. The unease that had plagued Portlock since its earliest days grew darker and more menacing as the years wore on. What began as whispers of strange noises and odd occurrences soon escalated into something far more sinister. People were vanishing. Hunters, fishermen, loggers, all seasoned individuals who knew the land and its dangers well. At first, the disappearances were sporadic, easily explained away by the harsh and unforgiving wilderness. But the truth, as the townsfolk would soon discover, was far more chilling. The first to go missing was a hunter, a man known for his skill and his fearlessness. He left one morning to track game in the forest, but never returned. A search party was sent out, and after days of scouring the dense, shadowy woods, they found only his rifle, snapped in half as though by some incredible force. Nearby, the mossy ground bore massive footprints, larger than any man's, and deep gouges in the surrounding trees suggested a violent struggle. The party returned to town shaken and silent, reluctant to speak of what they'd seen. Then there were the loggers, working the outskirts of the forest to feed the growing town's demand for timber. One by one, they began to report strange occurrences, tools disappearing, trees falling in unnatural patterns, and the ever-present feeling of being watched. Then, one day, a worker failed to return. His co-workers, uneasy but resolute, searched for him, only to find blood, smeared tools, and enormous tracks leading deeper into the woods. No body was ever recovered. The disappearances multiplied over the years, each more inexplicable than the last. Fishermen who set out at dawn were never seen again. Days later, their boats would wash ashore, eerily intact but entirely empty, with no signs of struggle. Some townsfolk spoke of hearing screams carried on the wind at night, high-pitched and desperate, cutting through the stillness like a blade. Others claimed they saw figures moving at the edges of the forest, just beyond the flicker of lantern light. These weren't men, they insisted, but something far larger with an unnatural gait. Perhaps the most horrifying discovery came one summer morning when a group of children stumbled upon a grisly scene by the river. Scattered along the bank were human remains, torn apart and left as though by some massive predator. The coroner, a hardened man unshaken by most, was said to have emerged pale and trembling, muttering about wounds no bear or wolf could inflict. The incident was quickly hushed, but the fear it ignited spread like wildfire through the town. As the disappearances mounted, so too did the unease within the community. Families began locking their doors at night, though they knew it would do little good against whatever force was stalking them. The woods were no longer a source of sustenance, but a looming threat, a dark and impenetrable labyrinth that seemed to swallow anyone foolish enough to enter. Some residents claimed they knew the truth. They pointed to the stories of the Nantinak, the creature from indigenous lore said to stalk these very forests. Descriptions of its size, strength, and intelligence matched the unexplained evidence, the enormous footprints, the torn remains, the eerie howls in the night. Skeptics dismissed these tales as superstition, but even they couldn't explain the mounting losses or the fear that gripped Portlock like a vice. By the 1940s, the disappearances became too frequent and horrifying to ignore. Entire families packed up and left, abandoning their homes and livelihoods without looking back. Those who stayed behind spoke of a creeping dread that settled over the town, as though the very air had turned heavy with malevolence. Even the boldest of men refused to venture far from the safety of the town's center, and those who did were rarely seen again. And so, one by one, Portlock's residents fled, leaving behind only the echoes of their fear and the ruins of a once thriving town. Today, the forest has reclaimed much of what the settlers built, but the stories remain. Portlock is no longer just an abandoned village. It is a place of legend, its name forever tied to the chilling mystery of the disappearances that sealed its fate. The disappearances in Portlock remain one of Alaska's most enduring mysteries, and over the years, countless theories have emerged to explain what could have driven an entire town to flee in terror. Some are rooted in folklore, others in the cold realities of nature, and a few delve into the unknown, where logic falters and fear takes over. The most pervasive theory is tied to the indigenous Alutiiq people's warnings about the Nantinak, a creature said to stalk the forests around Portlock. Descriptions of the Nantinak bear an unsettling resemblance to modern accounts of Bigfoot, a massive ape-like figure, standing well over 8 feet tall with extraordinary strength and intelligence. The Nantinak wasn't just a creature, though. It was seen as a malevolent spirit, one capable of preying on humans who strayed too far into its domain. Witness accounts from the time chillingly align with these descriptions. The enormous footprints, the guttural howls heard at night, and the violent injuries inflicted on those who disappeared all point to something more than an ordinary predator. Was the Nantinak protecting its territory, or had the settlers awakened something ancient and vengeful when they began harvesting the forest? For those who believe in the legend, the answer is clear. Portlock was abandoned because the Nantinak drove the settlers away, one by one, until fear consumed them all. Skeptics dismiss the idea of cryptids and spirits, pointing instead to Alaska's harsh and wild environment. Portlock's isolation placed it at the mercy of the wilderness, where predators like brown bears and wolves roamed freely. Some suggest that unusually large or aggressive bears, possibly displaced by changes in their habitat, could have been responsible for the disappearances and attacks. However, this theory struggles to account for certain details. The injuries on recovered bodies were described as more brutal and precise than a bear attack, and the large footprints found at the scenes did not match any known animal tracks. The sheer number of disappearances, coupled with the eerie phenomena surrounding them, seems to defy a purely natural explanation. Another theory posits that the true danger in Portlock came not from the wilderness, but from within. Some believe that a rogue individual, a hermit or fugitive hiding in the woods, could have been behind the disappearances. Alaska's remoteness has long made it a haven for those seeking to escape civilization, and such a person could have lived undetected near Portlock. This theory suggests that the footprints, tool thefts, and violent attacks might have been the work of a deranged or exceptionally strong individual, skilled at navigating the forest and evading detection. But skeptics of this theory argue that no human, no matter how cunning, could have maintained such an intense reign of terror without eventually being caught or identified. For some, the events in Portlock go beyond the physical realm. They point to the peculiar atmosphere of the area, the heavy silence of the forest, the inexplicable sense of dread felt by those who lived there. Could Portlock have been cursed, as the Allotique people warned? Or perhaps it was a thin place, where the veil between worlds is fragile, allowing entities from beyond to seep through. This theory ties the disappearances to the eerie sounds reported at night, the strange shadows moving in the forest, and the unshakable feeling of being watched. Those who subscribe to this idea believe that whatever plagued Portlock was not of this world, and the settlers unknowingly wandered into a place where they did not belong. A less sensational but still chilling theory suggests that the disappearances were the result of natural forces combined with the psychological strain of living in such isolation. Portlock's location placed it at the mercy of Alaska's unforgiving weather, with storms, heavy snowfall, and frigid temperatures creating treacherous conditions. It's possible that some individuals simply became lost or succumbed to hypothermia while navigating the wilderness. However, the psychological toll of living in such a remote, oppressive environment may have also played a role. Isolation, paired with the dark, endless forests and long winter nights, could have driven some to paranoia, fear, or even madness. This theory could explain why the entire town seemed to succumb to a shared dread, amplifying rumors and stories until fear itself became an unstoppable force. For those inclined toward conspiracy theories, the idea of a government cover-up has emerged as a tantalizing explanation. Some speculate that Portlock was abandoned due to secret military testing or experiments gone wrong. The remote wilderness of Alaska has long been an ideal location for such activities, far from prying eyes. Could the disappearances have been the result of exposure to dangerous chemicals, classified weapons, or encounters with something not meant to be seen? The lack of official records about Portlock's final days only fuels such speculation, leaving room for the imagination to run wild. Though decades have passed since Portlock's abandonment, its dark legend continues to draw the curious, the brave, and the foolhardy. Modern-day investigators, armed with advanced technology and a relentless drive to uncover the truth, have ventured into the overgrown ruins of the ghost town. What they've uncovered has only deepened the unsettling mystery, raising more questions than answers. Explorers returning from the site often speak of an oppressive atmosphere that seems to hang over the area like a fog. The journey itself is not for the faint of heart. Reaching Portlock requires navigating treacherous waters and hiking through miles of dense, shadowy forest, where the silence is broken only by the snap of twigs and the occasional low, guttural sound that is yet to be identified. Many report an unshakable feeling of being watched, as if the trees themselves conceal hidden eyes. Some of the most intriguing finds come from cryptid researchers who have combed the area in search of evidence of the Nantinak. Massive footprints, far too large to belong to any known animal, have been discovered in the soft earth near the ruins. Casts of these prints reveal a creature with an immense stride and clawed toes, lending eerie credibility to the stories passed down by the Alutiiq people. Even more unsettling, researchers have found broken trees and snapped branches at heights far beyond what any bear could reach, as though something enormous had moved through the forest with deliberate force. Motion-activated trail cameras set up around the ruins have captured fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures, vague shapes that move just beyond the camera's focus, disappearing as quickly as they appear. Attempts to track these figures have led to dead ends, with footprints vanishing into the underbrush or abruptly stopping, as if their maker had simply ceased to exist. Paranormal investigators have also taken an interest in Portlock, drawn by the stories of ghostly screams and disembodied voices that echo through the woods. They report picking up unusual electromagnetic readings in areas where no power lines or electronic devices exist. Audio recordings have captured faint whispers, guttural growls, and even blood-curdling screams in the dead of night, sounds that seem to defy natural explanation. Some investigators claim to have experienced physical phenomena. Equipment malfunctions are common, with fully charged batteries draining within minutes and devices refusing to operate until well away from the area. A few individuals have even reported being touched or pushed by unseen forces, leaving them shaken and unwilling to return. In recent years, there have been reports of experienced hunters and adventurers vanishing in the wilderness surrounding Portlock. These individuals, well versed in Alaska's rugged terrain, set out to explore the area and never return. Search parties have been sent to retrieve them, only to come back empty-handed, or worse, with chilling fragments of evidence such as torn clothing or bloodstains on the forest floor. The most chilling discovery occurred in 2018 when a lone kayaker stumbled upon human bones scattered along the rocky shore near the town's ruins. Experts were unable to determine how long the remains had been there or how the person had died. The location matched descriptions of earlier gruesome findings, adding to the growing list of unsolved mysteries tied to Portlock. Even modern technology has done little to dispel the ominous aura of Portlock. Drones sent to survey the area have malfunctioned mysteriously, their signals disrupted or lost entirely. Footage that does make it back often reveals unsettling details, movements in the treetops, unexplained shadows darting across the ground, and at times a strange fog that appears and vanishes without warning. For those who have dared to investigate Portlock, one thing is clear. Whatever force drove the townsfolk to abandon their home decades ago has not left. The land feels alive, as if it remembers the trespassers who once sought to tame it. As long as the wilderness remains untouched, it guards its secrets with an unsettling ferocity, daring anyone to uncover the truth. As the waves crash against the jagged shoreline of Portlock and the towering evergreens sway under a pale, moonlit sky, the mystery of this forsaken town remains unresolved. Decades of speculation, investigation, and whispered stories have brought no clarity, only deeper shadows to a puzzle that refuses to be solved. What truly happened here? Was it the wrath of an ancient creature, the untamed brutality of nature, or something far more sinister, something beyond human understanding? Each theory has its champions, but no answer feels complete. The footprints, the screams, the disappearances, and the overwhelming dread felt by those who visit seem to point to forces that defy explanation, a dark convergence of the known and the unknowable. Portlock stands as a chilling reminder of how small we are against the vastness of the wilderness, and how little we truly know about the secrets it keeps. It is a place that devours certainty, a place where the line between myth and reality blurs until they are indistinguishable. Even now, the ruins lie abandoned, consumed by moss and the creeping fingers of the forest, as if nature itself seeks to erase the memory of what transpired there. The winds that howl through the hollowed-out buildings carry with them a warning, one that echoes through time. Some places are not meant for us. Perhaps That is why the people of Portlock fled, not just to escape the terror, but to surrender to it, to acknowledge that this land was never theirs to tame. The silence of Portlock today is deafening, broken only by the whispers of the trees and the occasional echo of those who disappeared, as if their presence lingers, unable to leave the place that claimed them. In the end, Portlock remains a haunting enigma, a ghost town frozen in time and fear. Its story is unfinished, its truth buried deep in the wilderness and the minds of those who dare to imagine what really happened. Maybe, just maybe, the truth is best left undisturbed, locked away in the shadows of a place that refuses to be forgotten.